Public School Board, June 8th, 2020. And I'll go ahead and do a roll call to establish quorum. Shane Wells. Stephanie Arroyo.
Here.
Shirley Glennon.
Here.
Ryan Winslow.
Here.
Jessica Boudreau has an excused absence. She's called in. Christine Gabriel.
Here.
Kathy Brosnan. She was on the last call, so we will hopefully have her again. Susan Levington, yes. Rosalind Shavda. I've got her here with her iPhone. We'll pass that. Rosalind?
I'm here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Kelly Gordon?
Here.
Bruce Patrick?
Yeah, Susan, my internet's a little shaky, but I'm here.
All right, thank you, Bruce. Debbie Hinrichsen? Misty Lowe had let us know that she has a professional development meeting this evening. Erica Helm?
Here.
Carrie McMahon? All right, so we have 2 from Stratford, 4 from Nottingham, and Northwood, so we do have a quorum. And here's Debbie. Hi, Debbie. So we've got 3 now, so we're all set. So we will be Rosalind at 6:55, but that will not affect our quorum. So at this point, board agrees, I would like to have Michael Campbell, who's the CPA Director of Plodzik and Sanderson, and Kyle Gingras, CPA Manager with Plodzik and Sanderson, walk us through our audited financial statements at the SAU level for the year ending June 30th, 2019. And everyone should be in possession of the actual financial statements and the governance letter that accompanied them. And if it's okay with the board, again, perhaps we could just run through the highlights of the financial statements and then address some of the governance issues. Does that work for you, Mike?
That works for me, yeah.
Okay. All right,
Absolutely.
I'll turn it to you.
All right, so what I'll do is I'll walk you through, we'll start with the financial report and then we'll move into the governance letter. So if you have it available, we're going to start on page 1 and 2 of the financial statements. And this is ultimately, this is the reason why you hire an independent CPA firm, is to come in and evaluate the legitimacy of your financial statements in terms of being fairly stated in all material respects. So if you go to the bottom of page 1 there, under opinions, you'll see that you did actually receive a clean opinion, as you did in the past, which is that this ends up being the best opinion that any government can get. So in that case, you've met all requirements as laid out by the GASB and other accounting standards.
Mike, can I just, for 1 minute, I just wanted to ask, I hadn't done this. Are we recording?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just know we hadn't asked. I'm sorry, Mike.
No problem at all. So from there, what we'll do is we're going to go to page 9. This is a quick breakdown of how your general fund performed over the past year in terms of budget to actual revenues and expenditures. So if you go down and look at that unassigned fund balance ending, you ended about 233,000, almost 234,000, which was down from about 217 the year before. But you will notice that the return of school district assessments of 150. So when you're looking at that decrease in fund balance, that was planned by the members of the board and management. So that result is expected. Next, I'm going to have you jump around a little bit. One thing they do with these GASB presentations is it doesn't really flow real cleanly. I'm going to have you go to page 32 and page 33. What these 2 schedules here do is they break out your revenues and expenditures in a little more detail. So on a more detailed basis, you can see how did you perform budget to actual on the revenue side and then on the expenditure side. So all in all, when we look at the financial statements, The end product, we didn't find anything alarming or unexpected. As I said, the actions of the board was to take action to reduce the fund balance from prior year. That was accomplished without sacrificing what I would consider to be still a healthy fund balance to be able to allow you to meet your obligations as they can do. From there, you'll notice at the end of your report, it's a little bit different. That's because you guys were required to have a single audit. So you ended up with 2 more opinion letters in the back and then the single audit documentation as well. So what I'm going to do is have you go to page 39, which is schedule of findings and question costs. And at the bottom of that, this is where we're going to start talking about some of the conditions we found. And I'll have Kyle, let me get it started, but I'm going to have you kind of expand on what it is. So when we went in to do the grants, what we found was that the general ledger maintenance of the grants weren't what we expected. A few factors that contributed to it. I know that the number of individual grants you operated over this year increased from prior years. You've had a few other projects going on at the SAU office that may have also made the management a little bit more involved than in the past. I know you changed software and you had, I believe it was some time measurement system that was put into place. So a few factors may have contributed to this. Ultimately, what we found was that to complete the audit of this area, your financial statements, Kyle had to contribute a substantial amount of time working with your staff to get to the point that the records could actually be audited. And with that, Kyle, I'll have you jump in and expand on what I'm saying.
Okay. There were a number of issues that we came across in the grants fund, which are detailed in this material weakness here. I think really the biggest issue was that there was no consistent reconciliation going on in the fund. So we, during the audit, had to go through each individual grant, reconcile it and tie it out to get the numbers to where they needed to be. And then work on implementing a process that will help to make sure that this continues to operate more effectively going forward.
With that, what you'll see is at the bottom of page 39 and the top of page, it's actually about the first half of page 40, the actual breakdown. That's the presentation required under financial reporting guidelines of how to present the condition we found. At the end of the day, we were able to get where we were, but the fact that it took so much additional time is a sign that this is an area that the SAU needs to contribute a little more time and resources to managing this on the GL. I did have a chance to talk to the superintendent today, and I think the important thing I'd like to share with all of you is not to necessarily point blame at anyone, because one thing I would say about the SAU in your 3 districts over the past, I would say it's closer to 18 months to 24 months, you've had substantial turnover in your finance department. Glenn now is the 3rd person to hold that seat in a 24-month period. And I mean, I would like to say that my interactions with Glenn have been very positive. Not a huge sample, but you know, when we need to get in touch with each other, it's efficient and we get to the point. So that's positive as well. So I would say that's important. That kind of is going to lead into some of the governance letter comments. One of them being the cross-training of staff. You obviously are all aware of the absences in the finance department this past year. I think your superintendent does almost as much in the finance department in my time as your auditor as any other district. He's had to help us out, and I understand how busy he is, but he still makes it a priority that when we're there, we get what we need. With a few timeouts requested throughout the audits, but he's been very good in terms of helping us. That element has been a challenge just by the nature of it, and it's really no fault of anyone. I mean, nobody could have predicted the illness that you dealt with in your finance department, but still at the end of the day, we all had a job to get done. So with that, I'm going to slide into the governance letter. Specifically, we're going to go to, we'll quickly touch on page 2, chart of accounts repeat comment. That's in there because the condition did exist during the year. However, if you look at the end, we do acknowledge the fact that for fiscal year 2020, it has been rectified. Just because it existed, we felt it was appropriate to leave it in there. Fund balance policy, that really would not be a difficult comment to remove. Again, with all the turnover and everything going on in the SEU office, it probably wasn't a high priority. I would encourage you to revisit the fund balance policy this year before the audit. We're now going to go into page 3 of the governance letter. This is where we get into a few areas that need some attention. The number one, cross-training. This has been in the 2 years that we've been doing the audit, I believe that we've dealt with an absence of a key member of the finance department in each of the 2 years. Different people, but something that we did have to deal with. And I think that with an initiative to maybe cross-train the staff a little more to be able to fill in absences, it would help the district as a whole, the districts and the SEU as a whole. Change in management, we did note this in here just because it was unusual to have another person have to fill in there. So we wanted to make sure that was noted. Comment on timesheet approval. Reconciliation procedures. This is something we talked about last year. I think because of some of the delays in last year's audit that this maybe didn't have an opportunity to be addressed in the current year. And you see the balance sheet and reconciliations and roll forward. Again, there were some journal entries that had to be posted from last year that just didn't get posted. Then the last part, you see the federal compliance concerns.
I have a couple.
It doesn't necessarily look great, but I think that one thing that needs to be considered is the substantial turnover, the absences as well. There's a lot going on there. And I think I said this to the superintendent last year. I was really looking forward to the next year because I think they're on the right track. Again, I say that because I do think you're on the right track. Some of the recommendations, the cross-training is important. I would also suggest developing an audit manual, procedures manual, that at least would then give you an outline for anybody. If somebody were to come in and fill in, they would at least have a blueprint of how things are processed. Transactions such as cash receipts, cash disbursements, purchase orders, all those areas, payroll, so that you're able to continue without missing a beat.
So you're talking about documenting processes and roles and responsibilities?
Yes, I would say a formal document where I know in our firm ourselves, it's something we've started doing where the different types of transactions we do, we go through and we'll actually document the procedure, review it with management, and then we adopt it. And then that is in the event that I'm not able to make it to work anymore, Kyle's able to look and say, all right, what are his responsibilities? These are the processes for it. It makes the continuity of our organization more viable. And that's what I would suggest to all of my clients, not just to SAU 44 and the member districts.
Okay. I have a question, Mike.
Sure.
Under, I know that we touched on some of the difficulties you encountered performing the audit, and you said there were significant issues in the governance letter with the management of the grant funds. You said that you spoke to the SAU about the issues. Now, are part of the problems that you're referencing, not looking into the $25,000 verifications and this other part on page 3 of the governance letter? Or page 4 rather, could you just sort of explain that to us a little bit better, please?
Sure. As you go through the different federal grants, they have different compliance requirements, and now we go in and audit them. We take out the compliance supplement and we actually audit it to that. So in this case, you had a non-federal entity contract with the vendor for $25,000 or over. You must verify that the vendor hasn't been suspended or debarred. There's actually, I believe, Kyle, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's actually usually a listing that that is available for us to review.
Right. Yeah, there is a listing on the STAM, the government website, that you can look it up. And certainly if you have questions on it, we can provide you with with the resources to do so.
Okay. And what about the second note you have here on the top of page 4, the second paragraph about the IDEA grant? I think you're referring to in that one that the people who are getting paid by both grants and from the districts, that there isn't an exact breakdown of how their time is.
Right, your timesheet has to reflect what hours are associated with the grant and which ones are not.
Okay.
I think on that,
Okay.
we had a finding the last time that we had a single audit, and then we wasn't required for a year or two, but I think there was, the hours issue was noted before.
It very well could have been,
There was a time and effort issue,
yeah.
time and effort certification.
Okay. So this though is referring specifically to an employee who's getting paid by 2 sources. And so you
Correct.
want to see a breakdown, very careful breakdown of the grant source.
Correct, not so much the grant source, the hours spent on the grant.
That's what I
is
meant.
the big thing. And I know that from the state standpoint, this is an area that the state is really cracking down on. The meetings I've had with Tim Carney and his associate with some of the clients, this is an area that if you're unsure about the timesheet, I know you can reach out to the state and they'll actually give you what they accept.
Okay.
They've got documentation to help with that.
Okay. All right.
Or if by all means, if somebody in your office wants to reach out to our office, Sherry Bradstreet for our side is our resident expert, and she's happy to talk to anybody and help out any way she can.
Oh, that's nice.
Our client, we don't do it we don't do pro bono work.
Does anybody else have any questions? We'll continue to ask, but I'm just wondering if there's anyone else with questions at this point. Nothing? Mike, I just have one thing for clarification.
Sure.
Page 39, you would identify material weakness. As you roll through the governance letter material, you refer to the condition. That's that you are referring to, that there were material weaknesses identified? And
The
for
grants management we identified as a material weakness, yes.
Okay. Just for everyone here so that they understand the financial definitions, what does a material weakness, how would one define that?
Sure. So a material weakness is a deficiency or combination of deficiencies in internal control over financial reporting, such that there's a reasonable possibility that a material misstatement in the annual financial statements would occur and wouldn't be identified in a timely basis.
And but with Kyle going in and actually getting things in order, you provided that work.
Yeah. Through additional procedures at year end, we were able to identify that wasn't the case in the situation. However, the condition did exist prior to his involvement.
Okay.
So the idea that management or governance could have identified something going on wrong there based on the financial statements was impacted by the maintenance of that one fund.
Okay. And then one other thing, the management discussion and analysis section is required by GASB.
It is, and it depends on our clients. We have a lot of clients who don't do it. They don't think it's worth the time. We have a lot of clients who do it. And really, one piece of advice I usually give to somebody who takes over for another person's work is they should omit that initial year, because they're looking at records that they weren't part of. So they may not know without substantial time and investment to figure out why some lines are overspent, why some are underspent.
Right.
Activity through the year that really the person who was involved in it at the time would have been able to respond to from a place of knowledge.
So one thing we did talk about at the audit committee level was the idea, because it's been a couple of years through nobody's fault. I mean, when you first come into a job, certainly you would have difficulty piecing everything together. But one of the things we discussed was the possibility of documenting along the way issues of interest, accounting matters and so forth. For instance, this year we could have written a little bit about the software system online and so forth. But in your opinion, would it be acceptable if those types of things were documented throughout the course of the year, and then at the end of the year it could be a joint management letter? Wouldn't necessarily have to be the business administrator if that role were to shift again?
I mean, it really should, that particular letter should come from management.
Right.
So, I mean, it certainly could, to your point, could you add some of those items in there? Absolutely. There are some requirements, prior to current year of your government-wide financial statements. Those are in there. An explanation of your general fund budgetary performance.
Okay.
But what you're talking about to me would be more financial highlights or highlights throughout the year that you wanted to share. Certainly management could do that. I do think it should come from the finance department, because when you're looking at, they really should be the ones with the most knowledge of the activity throughout.
Okay. And then the last piece, the analysis at the beginning of the audit over budget to actual, is that fairly well streamlined and easy to get data on?
What page are you on?
In terms of extracting from your software,
Just the analysis that you would get to start the audit. Usually you look at a budget to actual and you want to see what the actuals were that you could there.
I mean, in terms of that, we didn't have any challenges getting the information from the GL software.
Okay.
We did have it mapped from the prior year, so that made it a lot easier than the prior year. In terms of the budget, what we typically do is we obtain the information from the Department of Revenue Administration, and then we tie that into your GL to make sure that what you're using for the budget software is our budget balances is in agreement.
Okay.
In terms of our challenge, we had no issues with that. I mean, in terms of a quick analysis, not just looking at it from an audit standpoint, I think the results are reasonable.
Okay. And I guess finally, would you mind just going over the new GASB pronouncements that could impact us coming up, so that everyone is aware of what the obligations are going forward?
I certainly can. The one thing you're going to see is that the biggest one for you guys is going to be the fiduciary assets. So your student activity funds, what's going to happen with those is they're going to end up being reported as special revenue funds. So you'll see schedules added to your school districts where previously they were reported separately. They're now going to be blended with your special revenue funds and shown there. In terms of the rest of them, GASB has actually delayed the implementation of most of their pronouncements due to COVID-19, including 84, the one I was just talking about in relation to the student activity funds. However, that really is a reporting requirement, and it's not so much on your end as is on ours, and it's not worth holding off on. So we're advising all our clients to go ahead and show the presentation with the GASB 84 being implemented.
All right. Are there any other questions?
I do, yes. Yep. I just wanted to mention, we do have a fund balance policy that the audit committee worked on, brought to the board. I don't know where it's at right now, but we do have a policy. I guess my other question is about the reconciliation of the grants monthly. I know we talked about this, the audit committee, probably a year and a half ago, and I think we tightened that up, I thought, where we were, this is why we were depending at one point on having a large fund balance, because our grants weren't being reconciled every month. So we're waiting for money because it was trailing. I think we tightened it up quite a bit, right, Scott Rooney? So I guess my question is.
No, that's not. So there's two different things you're talking about. You're talking about the monthly reporting where we get the invoice, Brett enters the report into the grant, and then I approve it so it can be paid by the DOE.
Right.
That's not the kind of reconciliation that I believe the auditors are talking about.
Okay.
The auditors are talking about reconciling the grant system to Infinite Visions and then doing a monthly reconciliation in Infinite Visions to make sure that the numbers in the grant tie to the numbers in the financial system.
Right.
So those
Okay.
are two different
Okay,
sort of topics.
okay.
So
So Mike,
Your
did we,
ledger should reflect your actual business or your actual operations.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, I did too, yeah.
I think that it's the notion that your accounting record should reflect actual activities, and because some of those journal entries hadn't been made from the prior year, and then there's issues with posting to the general ledger when you have a transaction, that was creating a general ledger. I think is that right, Mike?
Both are issues, but in this particular case, it would be reflecting the GL reflecting the actual activity reported to the state of New Hampshire on a timely basis.
okay,
So I think on the one end, you're meeting their monthly requirement to issue to file everything with the state of New Hampshire. Superintendent is signing off on it. The problem is it's not being reflected in the financial statements themselves. Basically, all that information was brought back on. It was backfilled into the GL. Probably in what, February or March, Kyle?
Yeah, it was all done at once.
Yeah, it was Q1 of 2020.
okay.
So that's what we're saying. It's not so much the filing to the state, it's the actual getting it into your financial software so it can be recorded and then observed by others, including yourselves and management.
Okay.
So I want to follow up on that. Mike, I thought that you shared, and I thought I read it in either the actual audit or the government's letter, that we did, because of not getting reimbursed or missing a timeline of getting reimbursed, we were sort of eating the cost of some grant funded project or something that was a small amount. Kyle, you were sharing that with us at our last meeting.
That's correct. There were a couple grants that the grant had expired and reimbursement hadn't been requested before the grant expired. So essentially you had to shift the expenditures over to the general fund. They were relatively small amounts. And I guess as far as the reconciliations, it's the whole process of reconciling individual grant monthly to make sure, revenues and expenditures should agree for each grant. And then once you reconcile the expenditures, you need to request the reimbursement from DOE monthly instead of doing it all at once. Later on, making sure that you post the revenue when you request it from DOE. So reconciling each individual grant, requesting reimbursement, and then making sure the grants fund in total is reconciled as well. So it's kind of the big picture of starting with the individual grant, requesting the reimbursement, and then making sure the whole grants fund is reconciled.
Okay, so it's both pieces. I guess my last question is, you mentioned that we were not having the reconciliation of the funds that are being, I don't know if it means that something that's being deposited or whatever with the bank. We need to have two people sign off on that. I was confused on what that meant. Could you explain what that means? And this is on the governance letter. It's page 3. It says
Okay.
reconciliation procedures.
So, yeah, so what we're saying is that we have a GL reconciliation cash and the treasurer is reconciling their cash. At no point could we tell whether or not those two reconciliations were ever compared to each other. So, I mean, one of the things we say is that when you do that, somebody should just sign off on it, physically sign off on the reconciliation to document that it did occur. The part of the benefit of having a treasurer outside of the system is that checks and balances. So if there's something that's amiss in one of them, when you're comparing the two, it gives you the opportunity, management and the treasurer, to look and say, well, we have a variance, where is it? It could be a case where somebody's missing an outstanding check, check has been voided, something along those lines. And then the other thing, not that it's the case that we're concerned in this area, if one side was doing something inappropriate, this would be the ability to be able to identify that. You know, if the treasurer, and please, I'm not saying this about the treasurer, but if the treasurer were to issue unauthorized checks, that's where it would come up, is when you're comparing the two.
Mhm.
So that, all we're saying is that you're there, you have the two reconciliations going. At some point, those two reconciliations could be compared to each other and verifying they're in agreement. And if they're not, address why they're not in agreement.
So we should have a procedure around that.
Yeah, again, going back to the accounting manual and procedures, that would be one of the items, yes.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
So does anyone else have any questions? So we've scheduled Mr. Campo, his team for each of the individual districts as well coming up. So you'll have an opportunity to have your individual districts presented and questions answered. I'd like to, if there are no further questions, I'd like to thank you all for coming in and providing all this detail for us. And it looks, you're probably going to be getting ready to start again, right? At this point?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you both. Thank you all.
Thank
Hey,
you.
thank you, Mike, and
All right.
I will respond to your email.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay,
All right. Bye now.
Thank you.
bye, thank you.
All right. I believe we do have some community members here. I don't know if you want to check public comments at this point.
I can, if that's what you'd like, Ms. Levinson.
I think we should at the top of our agenda.
Okay. So I will go ahead and call out the last two digits of your phone number. If you have a public comment, please state your name and address. Last two digits, 50. Do you have a comment you'd like to make? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next person in the public. Last two digits, 60. If you have a comment you'd like to make, please state your name and address.
That might be Kathy.
That's Kathy Brosnan.
Oh, I looked at my list and it wasn't the phone number that's listed. Ms. Brosnan?
No, I have the cell phone right now.
Okay. Yeah,
I have
looked-
no comment.
Okay. I will rename it so that you're not lost in there again.
Okay, I'm lost anyway, so it's okay.
All right. I guess we'll move on then to the meeting minutes of May 11th. You found on page 4. Do we have a motion on the meeting minutes, or would you like to make corrections first and then make your motion?
I move we accept the meeting minutes from May 11th, public and non-public. This is Erica.
Second,
Who was
second, this is Stephanie.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Okay, are there any changes on page 4? Anything on page 5? Anything on page 6? Kathy, did you have something on page 5?
No,
Okay. All right, I think moving on to page 6. Page 7. Page 8. Page 9. Page 10. Motion and the second, are there any additional comments on this? If none, are you prepared to vote?
Yes.
Yep.
All the, roll call. I'm gonna actually just go in order on the agenda. Stephanie Arroyo,
Yes.
Shirley Glennon. All right,
You
Shirley,
can unmute herself.
Sorry, yes.
okay, thank you. Brian Winslow,
Yes.
Christine Dabrio,
Yes.
Susan Levinson, yes. Rosalind Shavda has left at 6:40.
Kathy Brosnan's here.
I beg your pardon?
Yes. I just said yes. If you're going
Okay,
in order, I'm after her.
okay.
Christine.
Kathy Brosnan, yes. Kelly Gordon,
Yes.
Bruce Patrick,
Yes.
Debbie Henriksen,
Yes.
Erica Helm.
Yes.
All right, that motion carries unanimously. All right, moving on. Administrators report to be found on page 11.
Good evening. Starting on page 11 is the memo of the reports that are included in your packet. So on page 12, we have a summary of the revenues, both of the general fund as well as preschool. So as of May 31st, we have received about $27,000 more than what was anticipated for the year in the general fund alone. On page 13 is a summary of expenditures by function, showing a projected surplus at this point of almost $25,000. So combined with the revenue, it's about a $50,000 surplus. Page 14 is the report of the summary of the expenditure lines that are projected to expend greater than $1,000 than budget. Pages 15, 16, and 17 are the full line details of each expenditure line within the general fund. Page 18 starts the grant reports. Page 18 is the IDA preschool grant 2018-2019 for all districts. And actually that's 18-19, so 2021 is the IDA preschool for 2019-2021 for Northwood and Nottingham. And on my page numbers now that I wrote down must be wrong, because now we're on to a new report that's in the packet this month is the cash flow, actual cash balance, as well as cash flow projection report for the SAU. The hard line under April 30th, so that was the most up-to-date that we had at this point. So we'll be beginning in June, we'll be reconciling and tying out May. So then that will be changed to actuals. The projected cash inflows and outflows are based off of 3-year averages. So obviously we're not going to end June 30th with a negative cash balance. So that's just a result of the 3-year averages. And so that number certainly is not an accurate projection. Then on page 21 is our COVID financial impact report, broken out by each school district, the SAU, and then total, including expenditures, budgetary savings, and then lost revenues. And this report will be continuously updated as information is available. And the final 2 pages are just a summary of the school meal prices that have been recommended to each of the districts, and more just informational purposes for the joint board.
So each district, Nottingham did at our last meeting will determine what they want their school meal prices to be.
Correct.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions on any aspect of the financial report?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I see you.
Okay, I have to switch screens. Okay, can we just look at the monthly revenue report, Clem? Now, with the preschool tuition, did we waive or reimburse people for preschool this last few months that would
Yes.
impact the revenue? Is that accounted for here?
It'll be accounted for in the preschool revenue.
Okay,
There's
well,
no
I guess
information.
that's what I'm looking at here, so I just wanted to know, I just wanted a little bit of an explanation about that.
Explanation as far as what? That the
So
tuitions
is
were
this
refunded?
correct? I mean, yeah, what was refunded? Is that the number that we're seeing right there with the balance, or for each?
Correct.
Okay, all right.
So
So,
that is showing what we did not collect based on what was anticipated to be collected.
okay. So, and then when we look above, because I know I heard you refer to the revenue in this page. Now, the child and nutrition aid, isn't that money sent back to each district?
Right, so there'd be an expenditure line elsewhere in the budget that would offset that.
Okay, so because you said with this revenue line and then the balance on the other, there was $50,000. So that's what was confusing me,
Right.
because that money is sent back to the district, so it's not really revenue for the SAU.
Right, but if the expenditure is showing in the expenditure report as well, then it's going to offset. So the total surplus balance, fund balance for the year is going to be any excess revenue, unanticipated revenue that was brought in addition to any budgetary savings that are not spent.
Okay.
So
So I guess my question is, really, when we're looking at the monthly financials on that end on page 17 in our packet, page 3, that 24,900, almost $25,000, that's really where you feel that we're pretty much at right now?
with the information that we have at this point, yes, or as of May 31st.
Okay, because when you were talking about adding that other money from the revenue, and it sounded like we had $50,000 left, but most of that revenue is going back to the district, so that was what confused me. Yes.
Well, I didn't hear a question. It sounded as a
No, so
statement.
that was what confused me. So the $25,000 is basically what we have, what you think we have left, not 50.
The 25,000 is what I'm saying is our projected budgetary savings at this point.
Okay, there you go. Thank you.
Well, I just had one more clarifying question, if I could, just for my clarification. Looking at the revenue, I know in our recent process line in our manifest, there were all of the individual refunds of tuition for the preschool. And so I'm looking at, I'm trying to find page 12. And so at the bottom, those reimbursement, Northwood and reimbursement Nottingham,
Okay.
that relate to the refunded, or is it above that?
We lost you for a little while there, Miss Levinson.
Okay, I'm looking at page 12, and I'm looking at the last two lines of the report. The one line says reimburse Northwood, 95,2476, and the next line is reimburse Nottingham at 63,4015. Are those the tuition refunds there, or are those refunds reflected?
I'd have to look more into it, but I'm reading the line saying that it's preschool one-on-one. So I believe that that is a different category than the general preschool tuition.
Okay, all right. Okay, I just wasn't sure. So I would ask, do we have any sense at this point? We don't have the preschool monthly report here. Would it be possible for that to be emailed out to the board at some point down the road so we can see the impact of the refund and whether we still have any balance there or not?
You cut out on the last part there.
Looking to see what she's looking to see what the budgetary savings would be in the preschool as of right now. That's one of the questions I heard.
Okay.
Savings, I just want to know our with the return retention.
So you might need to turn your video off. I'm sorry.
I think part of the other problem is that there's background noise coming from other.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we should all just try to mute, and then when people want to speak, they can just raise their hand, just unmute.
Okay. All right.
Okay, it's getting better now. All right, okay, so can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm wondering if we could get, as a board, the financial information on the preschool, because it's not here. And my question around it is, given the refunds that were sent out, where do we stand right now with the preschool anticipated balance? Will we be, just where do we stand?
Okay. We can certainly get you that.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions?
Yes, I have a follow-up on your question, or your comment. So, and the revenue, when we base what we pay into the preschool, part of it is based on the revenue that our district would receive from our students attending. So the revenue that we have excused from, because of COVID, of not sending kids, the typical kids not going to the preschool, that then will, that exact amount will impact individual districts. It won't be pooled together. Do you know what I'm saying? Is that confusing? Is that confusing, Scott Rooney? Do you know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying. I just don't have an answer right now.
Okay.
But Glenn and I can look at that tomorrow.
Okay. Because the amount that we budget for the preschool individually is based on a 3-year average, and also the revenue that we usually expect per district from our tuition students. So therefore, if we're not getting, if one district's not getting 3,000, another one's not getting 2, then that should be calculated in our initial cost.
It's calculated off of, yes, right.
Okay.
But so if you go back to, and I'm not looking at it right now, I'm actually looking at preschool expenditure report. But if you go back to your revenue reports, you'll see that that's been divided out, I believe, and that each of your districts is short revenue. Right?
Okay.
But we will email you the preschool financial expenditure report. But right now it's showing.
Mr. Rooney, did you want me to go over that? I can share it. And
Glenn, are you prepared to go over the preschool report if we put it up on the screen?
Sure.
All right.
oh, okay. I wrote notes for it too, highlighting the 10 things that. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so I'll jump in if, well, I'm
Yeah,
sure
go.
Mr. Waring is more than capable. Better than me. I just wrote some notes just in case. Here, I'll screen share it right now.
Feel free to jump in, Nate.
No, Mr. Rooney in the previous meeting asked me to share it, so I just wanted to make sure. Can everybody see that?
Yes,
Is it at full screen right now?
it is.
Okay. So, Mr. Waring, you let me know when you would like me to scroll it or move it for you.
Well, I guess I would probably say scroll to page 3.
Okay.
I think everybody wants to see the bottom number.
Yep.
So right now, we're as of May 31st, the budgetary savings, operational savings, is about $31,000.
And that comes from 10 lines that are over $1,000 each. One of your large lines would have been your para salary that wasn't required, and then the corresponding FICA, which brings you about 13,000 in saving there. Your teachers barely ever like to be out of that building because they just feel it's too hard to be gone. So your substitute lines are there. There were some health insurance lines that were about $1,600 a piece that were different. That could have been from just not needing it. You had some New Hampshire retirement in there. ESY para wasn't required as many hours as what we thought. And then there's an OT savings along with the staff development of $1,400. So if you look down that, it's 10 different lines that really make for that large budget. So I believe that is pretty accurate.
Are there any questions regarding the preschool?
Other than, did you, I guess I missed, that didn't include the money that was turned back, right? The loss of revenue?
This, not in this, it does not. This is expenditure, so that would not be under this. So we'd have to look at this in a different way. And I think
Right.
Mr. Waring would have to print something else specific to preschool for that.
Okay.
Okay.
So we
Okay,
do
thank you.
thing that we do for the SAU and basically say, here are your savings and expenditures, and here are your differences in revenue, and net the two together for the overall result.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone have any additional questions regarding the preschool financials? All right, hearing no questions, we will move on. Thank you very much. Financial report. The superintendent's report.
Don't need a personnel report tonight. COVID-19 update. Just funny the way the board meetings run. It's like one board hasn't heard this yet, but the other two have. So I'll make it brief, and then I'll tell the other board on Wednesday night. Your superintendent's advisory committee is in place and operating, divided into subcommittees. I know Nottingham and Northwood have already heard this. I'll probably just save it and cover it in Stratford on Wednesday night. Is that okay with Stratford?
Sure.
They're generally, I know some subcommittees are meeting this week. My goal is to have a meeting next Tuesday and report out and see where we're at. As far as food service update, massive confusion at the food service level during COVID-19. We received one letter that said we were eligible to serve summer meals. Then we found out that we weren't. So your food service update is, there is no federal help with summer meals. And generally those districts that are a site of service for summer meals have a free and reduced lunch rate of 50%. So given that, I think your food service operations are starting to wind down for the year. I think they want it probably a week after, we're doing meals like a week, up to a week after we got out of school. If anything changes, we will let you know. But that's where we're at right now. Is that right, Glenn? I know we've been going
Correct.
back and forth. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
I had one question in regard to this. I had asked at the Nottingham meeting. I know we're accumulating, and it's in this report, the cost and the losses of revenue related to the COVID situation. And the question that had been, I had asked at that time was, ultimately, our allotment was going to be figured on one or whatever title they're going to give us. We've seen our numbers now. I think Nottingham is 23. So it's being a grant, and you will apply to draw that down, or we will just get a check for 23, or how will that work?
I'm confused by your question, and plus there's a lot of background noise going on, and you keep chopping up on me.
Yeah, the background noise is chopping us.
Yeah.
Can you mute? Because I think a lot of it's coming from you, and it makes everyone else we can't hear when they're talking. Thank you.
Oh. All right. So again, my question is just so that everyone can understand, we've been given via email the amount that each district is eligible for reimbursement.
You mean For ESSER funds? Are we talking about ESSER funds now? COVID-19?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
And I'm just wondering, do we now have to apply for those as a grant, or will those checks just come in that amount? And if so, when will they arrive?
Well, they are in the grant management system. They are listed in the grant management system, but the awards aren't listed in the grant management system yet.
Okay.
As soon as those are in, we can certainly run through very quickly and just put transportation in as a COVID-19 loss, and that's going to cause a reimbursement of your ESSER funds. I think one district's 57, the other's 30, and the other's 23 or something like that.
Yes.
So the question is do you want that? I mean, I don't think that's going to show up in revenue this year, because I don't think we'll be able to turn around and get it back fast enough. It would show up in revenue for next year. But it will be a direct check out of the grant system.
So that's probably okay, because next year we'll probably experience more stress.
I would think.
I have a follow-up question about those funds. The amounts were determined based on our Title I allocations, right? Not based on our need in terms of what we spent for COVID.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, do we have any additional questions in regard to superintendent's report?
Yes. I don't know why I just lost my video, but I just have a question about when we're looking at the COVID, the impact report, the software and services for the SAU, the $3,700. Scott, could you just maybe talk about that?
Zoom, remote PC, ink for people's personal printers, little incidental expenses from working remotely. Added up to that.
So the Zoom is actually has to be paid for? Is that
Yeah.
how it works? What is the cost for, is it a subscription or?
It's a subscription. I would have to look it up.
Okay.
So I don't have the cost, but what I want to make sure you understand is Educator Zoom is free, but it doesn't allow us to record, and it doesn't allow us to have as many participants as we would need. So that's the different feature. That's just so you knew why we had to pay for it.
Okay,
You also
thank you.
can't have people call in on the regular.
Correct.
free subscription.
Okay.
Right. And plus, I did a 40-minute limit to a meeting, right?
They increased that, I believe, to unlimited anyway, but not till well after we needed it. It was really the phone call in. It was able to schedule, and it was able to have a lot of the other features that we required.
Right.
And all of the free educational stuff is going away at the end of the month.
That's correct.
So looking forward, if teachers need it, it's not covered the same way it has been this spring.
Oh, they're taking it away?
That's what they're saying. After June 30th, the free educational accounts and the unlimited time are going away.
Yeah, they'll still be free, but you can't, it's less people and a time limit and all of that.
Right.
And the other expense that I was just reminded of was DocuSign. So that's it.
Are there any other questions in regard to the superintendent's report? Hearing none, we will move on to the student services director. And I have a page number.
Okay, so my report was really going to be talking about the preschool budget, and I had already shared that just a minute ago. Based on what we've been doing prior to, I don't have any new news to share with you until next month when we figure out exactly what the guidance will be for ESY and how we're going to handle all the other stuff. And I'll be sharing that with each board and then talking about it as a whole here.
And we are budgeted for ESY at this time.
We are, and we did, as Mr. Rooney had shared with each board before, we had each district got a remote grant that was given to us, 4,000, 6,000, I believe, 4 or 5,000 for each district, that was only allowed to be for remote instruction for special ed students. Our districts were pretty well off, and we were able to do a lot of stuff ahead of time without needing to tap that. But over the summer, I am going to utilize those funds to provide related services to our special ed students through purchase and sales agreements and a contract with Co-Brown. I'm going to be working with Co-Brown to be able to support our high school students that were not able to keep up with the remote instruction, that they're identified students and weren't able to keep up with remote instruction. So it's not true ESY. It's more of a summer school, but it's because of this COVID, we are helping to support some of that additional instruction that they went without. And of course, all of that will be tied to the district that the student resides in.
Is there any need for that at the students at Dover that are?
They have not reached out to me. I'll touch base with them again, but Co-Brown had reached out to me and told me they had some real struggles with being able to get students to, they're afraid that we are going to have some fifth-year students, 5-year seniors, because of missing credits. And I said, well, let's look at how we might be able to do this otherwise. So that's what we're working on right now. Okay.
And you'll check to see if there are any Dover students in a similar predicament?
Yep.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board in regard to the Student Service Director's report? All
I
right.
have one question. Oh my gosh, I have one question. So the CBI program that is funded by the IDEA grant, since the Co-Brown was out for 3 months like everyone else, or 2.5 months, did that instructor work with the kids remotely to make sure that they were
I can't answer that because with clear yes or no, but I know all their teachers were working with students, so I would assume that teacher was working with them because every other teacher was working with their students during that time.
Well, the reason I asked is what the auditor was just talking about is when people are paid with grant money, that they need to be keeping track of the hours they're working. So I know that position is totally funded by our IDEA money, and that's where I'm going with this.
That's different because that's a purchase and sales agreement. We purchased that from Co-Brown. That is not our employee. That is a flat rate fee for that employee.
Okay, so that is a purchase and sales. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions? All right then, moving on. The superintendent evaluation tool is in the packet on page 24. The management committee met and looked at a white paper that talked about superintendent evaluations and looked at the methodology and how we score. One of the things that came up through the use of our current tool was that the way that it was set up was difficult. That two seemed to be problematic, the way that it was scored. I'm going to try to find an example here. So what it said before was 1 needs improvement, 2 is good, 3 is excellent, and 4 is outstanding. What the white paper recommended was a score starting with 0, which would be you don't have any, you don't have sufficient evidence to score that. And you can see on this new evaluation tool that the scores are different now. So it would be, instead of NA, it would be a 0. And then I'm going to try to bring this out. 0 would be you cannot judge. One would be performance is unsatisfactory. Two would be performance requires improvement. Three is professional performance noted, and four would be exemplary. So what I propose that we do is to send everybody page 17 of this white paper, which is describes what all of these scores would actually mean. So we can do that. And then the reason why it's in here is that there were some questions that people felt they couldn't readily evaluate. And so if anybody has any of these questions that they could note here that they'd like to have answered, and think they're difficult to evaluate, we could go through that now. Or if you wish, you could pick it up at a local meeting and just say which ones you feel are problematic. You can come back to the next with a newly redesigned scoring key and the questions that folks feel are difficult to evaluate.
I think it would be helpful for people to see the white paper, that page. It was pretty good. I mean, it really did explain in detail, well, if you give a 1, what does a 1 mean? Well, a 1 means this, and you need to be able to give examples. You can't just throw a number in there. If you give a 4, what does a 4 mean? So for a 4, which you're saying this is outstanding or it's the highest number you can give in your grade, you need to give an example of that. So it puts a little bit more responsibility on the board to not just throw numbers around, but to really think about each number. And if you're choosing, you know, something extreme like a 1 or a 4, you need to be able to give an example. And then the 0, of course, would be that you really, there's nothing to score because you have not, it doesn't apply to anything you've seen. But I think that the explanations are really helpful. Kelly found that, and it's a good report.
Did anyone have any additional comment on that? Kelly, any input since it was your document that you found or anything? Any members of the board, any items on the current, as you packet, on the current evaluation tool that you feel could, or difficult to assess or could be not right at the moment? Okay.
So I'll be able to remember more readily which questions I thought were problematic when I see the completed version.
Okay.
I think rather than have me try to go through them right now and think about it, I think that would be, it would be easier for me to just reflect on the answers and then.
Okay. I will say in regard to that, thank you for that segue. Mr. Rooney and I spoke today. We have, from a prior meeting, that we would address this in June if the evaluation had not occurred yet. So Mr. Rooney and I talked today, and he is willing to have an in-person.
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay.
I started to chop up.
Okay. We had a brief conversation, and Scott is essentially willing to have a sit down, you know, if we follow social distancing protocols and wear our masks and so forth, and find a location that allows us to do that, or to go ahead and do it via Zoom. And I think it would be good if we could just get that scheduled and go ahead and do it with what the folks involved feel is a comfortable method, if you will. And then that will assist us in preparation of goals. So I don't know, for the folks that are on that committee right now, if you have any concerns or preferences for meeting in person or setting it up via Zoom, and I will deliver the completed evaluation tool to you.
I'm comfortable either way.
Okay, thank you.
Same.
Doesn't matter to me.
Okay, thank you. Christine?
Sorry, I thought you heard me. Yeah, I'm fine. Either, anyway. I
Okay.
think there's only going to be, what, 5 of us? So we should be able to be in a room where we can be a good distance apart, I would think. And everyone wears masks. That would be fine.
Okay, I'm fine with that too. And Scott, are you just hearing it here? Is this still acceptable?
Yeah, it's fine. We just probably want to use one of the conference rooms in the schools or a classroom.
Okay,
So it's big enough. I'll start checking that out.
all right then. So that takes up our conversation on the evaluation tool and on the evaluation itself being completed or delivered, I should say. It's completed, but it just needs to be delivered. All right, the next item that we have is SAU transition. And if anyone have anything else on item 9? Okay. I just take a quick count, make sure we still have a quorum because my screen is constantly moving around and I just want to make sure. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we've still got 9. I think we may have lost Mr. Patrick. I'm not sure. Okay. All right. So I'll try to keep track of that as well as we go through. So one of the things we've been talking about are the org chart and the job descriptions, and those are on page 41. So I don't know if anyone really had an opportunity to read through the job descriptions. But this is something that will help with audit, and it will help with documenting what we do procedurally at the SAU. And then on the org chart, I mean, typically the boards are shown at the top of the chart, so that might be something to consider. Are there any thoughts or input on page 41?
I agree with you that the joint board should be on the top if we're looking at the entire SAU.
I can adjust the chart.
Kelly, you unmuted. Do you have a comment?
Yeah, I have a question about the curriculum director. We have the curriculum director under the principal and under the superintendent.
That's Northwood and Nottingham. Our curriculum director reports into the superintendent.
Okay. And Northwood reports to principal?
Exactly.
So
Okay.
maybe we should label them that way. Should we put the town's names there so it's just a little clearer?
Yep.
So the assistant principals report to the principals, correct?
Yes.
Do they need to be on the SAU? Wouldn't they fall into the?
We can remove the assistant principal.
Well, I don't mean that you have to. I'm just wondering the thought process. But they do flow into the principals at the local district level.
Yes.
And their reviews are prepared by the principals?
Yes.
Okay. One thing I was wondering about too is the preschool. Is that just separate under the student services director? Oh, I do see it here. I do see it. I apologize. Just as one block. Okay. Are there any questions on the organizational chart or comments? Okay. This document then will move on, it'll be the document with the changes that we just spoke of reflected in it. the Nottingham Planning Committee would be looking at this organizational chart. I asked them to wait until it was reviewed again by the joint board. So is they're trying to understand the structure of the SAU and, you know, understand the whole organization. Is there anything else there? All right. Moving on to the job descriptions. Are there any thoughts or questions in regard to that? Kathy, I hear you're unmuted. Would you have a comment on that?
No,
Okay.
it just keeps flipping back from muted to unmuted. I think Zoom is playing games with me.
All right. I just want to make sure that you're able to make comment when you need to. So I'm trying to.
Okay. Thank you, Sue.
I have a question. I should know this, but the special education coordinator is underneath the director of student services. I don't think I somehow knew that we had that, and I can't find the job description.
So that is a role that we were sharing or are sharing with Northwood, and we pay for it. We're billed back for it, and we had to set it up that way because the two districts were paying, and so one district couldn't just pay it all out and have to be reimbursed by the other. But I think that locally we thought that it was a local position, but that the financial aspect of it would be handled through the SAU via bill back. But
I work with the coordinator closely, and I work with the principals in the evaluation of your coordinator. We do it jointly when it comes to the evaluation. But we all oversee. So the principals oversee the coordinator, and as well as do I.
Does Stratford have a coordinator?
No, we do not. We pay a stipend to one of our case managers, and it's also part of our assistant principal's duties to be the LEA for our special ed meetings. And so we do not have a coordinator.
But you have the coordinator role fulfilled through your assistant principal and
A stipend to one of the case managers, yes.
okay, and the student services director also evaluates those folks in conjunction with your principal?
Oh, I
No.
don't,
No.
he does not.
No, I do not.
I am not entirely sure that what Stratford has functions the same way as an actual coordinator. There's typically more to a coordinator's position than just LEAing.
Okay.
We actually had a coordinator, and when we had an assistant principal who had a very strong special ed background come on board, we sort of morphed that position in with her position. And then since that time, we felt that with our population that worked pretty well. And so we then shared it with not just from then on, from the assistant principal with one of our case managers.
I can't find the job description for that. And should it somehow be reflected that it's a position that you guys work together on oversight and everything so that it doesn't get missed when we're looking at structure from either perspective?
Yeah, because it's in-house, it's just a 50% role. Probably.
I don't even know how that would work. It's just not something I want to miss when we're looking at structure.
Right. 'Cause I know you had that role, but
We can add this. We can add a position description. They're in your local districts. We just need to pull them in.
Well, do we want to pull it in? I mean, it takes a vote of the board to add positions to the SAU, and I personally, I don't know if I want to pull positions into the SAU at this point, because we have so much to talk about.
Well, I think if it's going to be on the chart under the SAU, we should have
Job description.
yeah, with all the other ones.
I think it should be explained somewhere that a role that's local to the school and that it's a shared item. It's not wholly under the SAU.
Well, didn't you say that part of the supervision is your principal? So just like your principal is not part of your SAU, if the principal is doing part of the supervision with the student service director, maybe there could just be an asterisk.
Yeah, and maybe we should put an asterisk next to the Nottingham curriculum director too.
Yeah, because that's not really,
Right, because of this. Yeah.
okay. Are there any other questions about the organizational chart or comments? Would you like to take some time between this meeting and the next to reflect on any of the job descriptions? If there are questions or what have you, we could add to our next agenda.
Oh, I have a question. Is Mary a notary? Or I shouldn't say it that way. Is our current assistant to the superintendent a notary?
I believe Linda is the notary.
Oh, only because I'm noticing that on.
Yeah, Pat was a notary.
Okay.
Mary
Page
is.
40, yeah, page 46, just on number 18, it says performs a notary
Yeah.
public to notarize documents.
Okay, can you give me that page number again, Debbie? I'm sorry.
Page 46.
Yeah.
It was number 18.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, it sounds as though we're complete at this time. Everyone's good? All right,
Yeah.
then we will move away from the org chart. And then regarding transition, the management committee had, did we do those meeting minutes?
Miss Levinson, your mic is still really muffling in and out.
All right. Let me, is that better?
Yes.
Okay. So we've just talked about our number 10, the org chart and the job descriptions. I don't know if it's the board's pleasure to take a little extra time between now and the next meeting to review the job descriptions. And if you have any questions or comments, we can take them up for next meeting. And then
I would like that time.
I'm sorry.
I said I would like that time
Okay.
to review them.
Okay. And the management committee had talked a little bit about transition at our last meeting, and I just asked, could we put up the notes, the meeting minutes that Shirley had put together? And I don't know, my screen might just be not picking everyone up, but I'm not, okay, I don't see it. Okay, gotcha. So
I believe Brian was sending them over to Scott and Nate to be able to share it.
Okay.
Yeah, I sent them after we had the preschool meeting before this meeting started. I don't know if you guys got them or not.
Thank you, Brian.
Nate, do you have the preschool minutes in an email?
Yep. I have management committee
Or management committee, I'm sorry.
document. Yeah, I'm sorry, I have that. Okay, I pulled it up. Hold on. Would you like me to share it?
Yes.
Please.
Okay, there it is.
Huh. I don't think these,
That's not it.
yeah,
That was in the email. Hold on.
Let me see if I have it handy, if I can resend it real quick. Sorry, hang on.
I will say it's been a good group meeting. A lot of input and sharing of ideas, and it's been great. And Shirley's been great about documenting everything, which is wonderful for us. So it's been a pleasure on that.
Okay, it's just an email. I'm gonna forward it. Hold on, let me see. I just want to make sure I'm only sending you what you need and not a bunch more forward.
Your whole inbox.
Hey, well, she does that. I got an email from Misty, who wanted to clarify that she was an alternate on that committee. And I responded, and she copied it to the Stratford board, so I'm sure they saw it. I responded to her also because I came to the second meeting. I just wanted to be clear with everyone that I showed up there also as an alternate. So it's like the Northwood member is Shirley. But I think because there was all of the alternates at the first meeting and we didn't have an alternate from Northwood, I was asked to attend, or someone from Northwood was asked to attend, and I elected to. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was clear about that.
Yeah, wait, oh, I'm muted.
Oh, here it is. Here it is. So the goals, I think what we're going to try to do with that is after we have the evaluation and we get some input and feedback on the goals, we can begin to restructure those going forward without maybe reinventing the wheel, using a lot of what we currently have and fine tuning it. The transition discussion was started, and there is a report from Stratford as part of their SAU withdrawal, which was mandated by RSA 194C3, I believe. So they did provide an alternative structure that was put together, as a draft or what have you by the superintendent. So we looked at that. And I believe everybody at this point has had access to that and can look at it. And then we talked a little bit about how the apportionments are figured out, and that's with your town valuations. And we brainstormed some ideas for the future. And so that's kind of where we are right now. We have some shared contracts with special education transportation, the auditors. I'm trying to think what else we have. Obviously the lease. And legal. And I think the legal contract expires at the end of this year. We needed to find that out, like when the expiry dates are on some of these contracts, so we understand what we need to do going forward. So that was pretty much the conversation in a nutshell. And then we had some thoughts about what could be done. And I think everyone should probably look at page 9 of that document to get a feel for what one possibility is.
So if I could jump in for a moment,
Sure.
I'd like to request that as we move forward with the 2-district SAU, that the conversations about how that's organized and structured, that be handled by the 2 districts, so probably the preschool committee that we have. I just feel that it's a little odd to have a restructuring conversation alongside with the district that's not going to be involved in the future SAU.
So if we talk about that, the transition, there's a few layers to it, I think. I think we'd all agree. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
So there's going to be, Stratford leaving, and they're going to have to be figuring out their internal situation and who they hire and when they hire them and all of that. They're going to have to be getting their data off of our systems and so forth. And I'm sure there's a lot of things we haven't even really, we'll understand better as we progress. So Brian, you're proposing that future state.
Yeah, let me just clarify a little bit. Like I completely want to support the Stratford board with their exit, and I feel like we should share all information and do whatever we can. But when we're talking about reorganizing positions and how the SAU is going to look as a two-town SAU, I feel like that should be a conversation for the two towns to have.
Okay. So do we have any comment on that? Okay.
I'll make a comment. I would just say that I agree. I feel like it would probably be a bit of a waste of the Stratford board's time to be there when the ultimate result won't impact them going forward. So.
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. I was going to say, I think that we can look at it almost as two separate transitions. There's the transition of helping one group leave and managing that process and making sure they have everything they need and that everything is clear. And then there's kind of the restructuring transition, which should really be isolated to the two towns that will be part of that restructuring and how that will work for that group. So there's going to be the three-piece model, and then the next step is the two-piece. And I think that those two things need to be separated a little bit.
And then the other piece of it that, is that Nottingham is also at the direction of their voters looking at aspects of the SAU and determining what our best next steps are. So we should probably consider all of that as we progress. Understand our single district costs as well. We still have my screen shifts often, and I apologize. Sometimes it shifts and I'm wondering if someone's leaving. So I'm just trying to make sure that we continue to have a quorum.
I think that we do. The only person that we lost, I think, was Bruce a little while back.
Yeah, we're still at 10. At this time, I was wondering, we're kind of holding Mr. Waring here, and he had given us his full report. So
Good night, Glenn.
If you're okay with that.
Good night, all. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
Good night, Glenn.
Have a great night.
Sue, I just want to clarify because I think you just said we're at 10 and I think we're at 9.
Yeah, I'm counting right now too. Steppa keeps
Don't
jumping.
forget to count me. You can't see me, but I'm there.
9. Yes.
Yep.
All right. So do we have any further discussion on transition? All right. Do you want the management committee to continue to just gather data or not make any recommendations, but just be a legwork on data? I know Kelly and I are looking at other SAUs and other structured, or how would you conceive of that legwork being done?
I think if it's focused on the restructure for the two remaining districts, assuming that will be the case, that it should probably be moved over to the preschool end is what we were suggesting, or that Brian was suggesting.
Okay, so we should probably have preschool meetings regularly, preschool governance. And do you want Kelly and I to continue on our research for that group?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and we can continue, and we can help with that too if there's something that needs to be divvied up, if you feel like that would be appropriate in that step.
Okay. So we can probably send what we've got, and then next time we meet, lay it out in more detail. Okay. All right. It's weird. I can see you guys, but I can't. Okay. The update on the lease extension was just here to let you know that you voted on the lease extension. Your DocuSign came through and it was signed, so it's complete. I just wanted you to know that that task was completed. Moving on to committee reports, I think that the management committee gave their report. We will send out some documents. I apologize that we didn't send them out sooner, but we have done a lot of work, and a lot of discussion. I think we'll be pleased. Audit committee, I feel like you got your report tonight from the auditor. There are 2 committee members for the community that need to be filled, one for Stratford and one for Nottingham. So those postings are due. And I am going to ask that those postings go up onto the somewhere locally. I don't know if they've been they're not on our local website in Nottingham. I found them out on the Pawtuckaway Forum. And with people not visiting buildings, postings on buildings aren't helpful. So I thought we'd maybe look for ways to penetrate the community a little bit more with those. But
Perhaps something like leaving one at Cooper Hill and one at Liars, where people are grabbing meals quite frequently, and maybe even the Northwood Diner.
I can try to get those around as I'm not out much, but when I am out, I'll put them in my car. Also, Mr. Jim Hadley is the Northwood community member, and he wishes to continue. So Northwood is okay. It's just Stratford and Nottingham that require new community members. Okay. Number 13, future meeting agenda items or any other items that the board has.
I have a list if you want me to read it back to you.
Sure.
We're going to put the position descriptions back on with some changes and the org chart with some changes. I am going to try to get you contract expirations for legal services, special ed transportation, and the auditors. And then the superintendent evaluations going back on. Is that correct?
And hopefully maybe some goals, a stab at providing draft goals. Would it be overkill for the board to, and I'm asking the board, should we see copies of our contracts in just one spot so that people know what we have and when they expire and the costs of them and so forth? Is there any interest in that as we're trying to understand the organization better?
I thought at one time we had requested for that to all be in one place and for us to review it annually or something like that. Does anyone remember that? Maybe that was just at our local board. I don't know.
An idea.
I would be interested in seeing that, given that we're moving forward and looking at the structure.
So maybe we could get those in our next packet.
Yep, I got it.
And then people will just refer to the next packet all the time about, hey, that's where your resources are for contracts.
Yep.
Mr. Rooning, they also wanted a more clarified answer for the return funds to, or the loss of revenue for preschool.
Okay, I got it.
Okay.
Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to have on a future meeting agenda? That's pretty full, but. All right. Our future meeting date, we typically we have July 8th here. I'm just not sure how the board feels about July.
We usually take July off.
That seems like doable with everything that's happening, just with pandemics going on and that sort of thing. Are we able to just continue on a local board level for those meetings and take that July meeting off, or no? You guys would know better than me.
Mr. Rooning, where do you expect our reopening committee to be at that point? like, do you think that we'll have information to share, or to Shirley's point, could we just share it individually?
I think we can share it individually with the boards. A lot of the reopening, that's the week that they're going to release the recommendations. So if we
Likely
are-
we'll still be working then.
Yeah, I hate to say that, but I think we will.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, because oftentimes.
Good job. My wife yells at me all the time.
Oh, diplomatic. Oh, my goodness.
Oftentimes, we're delayed by the Department of Ed. So we already know we've been delayed once. So I think we'll still be working.
Would the board like to just meet in August then?
Yes.
Could
think that
we,
makes sense.
given that, could we then get the preschool loss of revenue emailed?
Yeah.
And the local preschool data on the screen, but could we get hard copy of that? And could we get copies of the contracts so that we just have those to read and we'll hit the ground running in August?
Yeah, that would be great to have some extra time to look through those.
All right. We can
Are
do that.
we going to want to have a preschool governance meeting then before August?
A lot of what we'd be reading, if we do our work, reading ourselves, we might be okay to do it in August and just be really well prepped.
Sue, maybe you should send the research that you and Kelly are going to be doing on looking at 2 district SAUs to people in the meantime to read.
Yeah, if we get it together, yeah, we could send that. And then that will let the governance committee, like preschool governance committee, determine, what else they'd like to look at or whatever. And start
That makes sense.
All right.
I have a question. If somebody finds a great book that offers some options for preschool, how to structure a preschool and that kind of thing, is there money at the SAU level for us to purchase a few of those books if we find them, Scott?
Yes.
Or
Well,
should we
is there money?
locally?
Is there money for us to purchase some books
Yeah.
that might? Okay,
Yes.
that's my question. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So we've set our future meeting date for August. Do we have need of a non-public session this evening?
Yes, we do.
Well, okay then.
A and C.
I'll make a motion, we go into non-public under RSA 91A3, 2A and C.
A second.
Okay, so I've got Christine and Brian on that motion.
Yes.
We'll roll call in. And just bear with me while I document this, okay? Because I like to just be able, just in case. Brian Winslow,
Yes.
Stephanie Arroyo,
Yes.
Shirley Glennon,
Yes.
Christine Dabrio,
Yes.
Kathy Brosnan,
Yes.
Kelly Gordon,
Yes.
Susan Levinson, yes. Bruce Patrick,
I don't think he's on anymore.
I was just checking.
Yeah.
Erica Helm,
Yes.
Debbie Henriksen.
Yes.
All right. So we are now officially in non-public. While in non-public, a vote was taken in regard to a personnel matter. I will now entertain a motion to seal the non-public meeting minutes of June 8, 2020.
Make a motion. You got it.
Okay, so Brian is making a motion to seal the non-public meeting minutes of June 8, 2020. Under
Second.
of, would adversely affect the rights of any person other than a member of this board.
I'll second.
Christine seconded.
Yes.
We'll do a roll call on that vote as well. Brian,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Shirley,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Susan, yes. Erica,
Yes.
Debbie.
Yes.
That motion carries with 9 in favor. All right, so our minutes are sealed. We set our future meeting date to August. And at this time, I could take a motion to adjourn at 8:31.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Christine and Debbie.
Yep.
We'll call out again, my goodness. Stephanie.
Yes.
Shirley,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Susan, yes. Kelly,
Yes.
Debbie,
Yes.
Erica.
Yes.
Okay, so our meeting is adjourned at 8:31, and we'll see everyone again in August.